Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivana Dari. Sodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. John Vistapad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Asatya Tushi Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila HG Bhakti Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Ananda Gaudavai Sundi Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Prem Sri Gaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gogopiyan Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Shiva Navadan Ki Jai, Shri Maya Pranavdan Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Jamunamai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakti Mindi Ki Jai, Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, all glorious summer devotees, all glorious summer devotees, all glorious summer devotees, all glorious to Shri Shri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning written in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 1, text number 3. Mahatang Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chaya Nirvrita Chitanang Na Kutumbe Spriha Matihi Mahatang Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chaya Nirvrita Chitanang Nakutumbe Sprihamitihi Matang Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chaya Nirvrita Chitanang Nakutumbe Sprihamitihi Matang Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chaya Nirvrita Chitanam Nakutumbe Sprihamitihi. Matam Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chayana Vichitana Nakutumbe Sprihamiti Matam Kalu Viprase Uttama Shloka Padayoho Chaya Nifchitana Nakutumbe Sprihamitihi. Mahatam of great devotees, Kalu, certainly, Viprase, O great sage amongst the Brahmanas, Uttama Shloka Padayoho, of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Chaya, by the shade. Nirvrita, satiated. Chitanam, whose consciousness. Na, never. Kutumbe, to family members. Sprahamiti, consciousness with attachment. Consciousness with attachment. Translation and purport. By His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada ki. Elevated Mahatmas who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are fully satiated by the shade of those lotus feet. Their consciousness cannot possibly become attached to family members. Purport. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has sung Nitai Pada Kamala koti chanda sushitala ye chaya jagat judaya. He describes the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda as being so nice and cooling that all materialists who are always in the blazing fire of material activities may come under the shade of his lotus feet and be fully relieved and satiated. The distinction between a family life and spiritual life can be experienced by any person who has undergone the tribulations of living with a family. One who comes under the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord never becomes attracted by the activities of family life, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 2:59, Param Drisva Navartate. One gives up lower engagements when he experiences a higher taste. Thus one becomes detached from family life as soon as he comes under the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshur Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Mukham Kotavata Lang Pangam Lang Hayate Grim Nyat Kripa Taraham Bande Shigarum Dinataranam Vanchakalpa Chibjischa Kripa Sindhu Jaivacha Patitanam Bhavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakti Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. This first word here, Mahatam, of great devotees. Of course, these two devotees, Parikshit Maharaj, he's asking a question now to Sukadeva Goswami, and both of these devotees are great Vaishnavas. And it's interesting that both of them had interesting pastimes in the womb. Sukadeva Goswami, he didn't want to come out because he knew Maya is powerful. He didn't want to come out. For how long was he in the womb? 16 years. Kind of inconceivable. It must have been like, you know, how Pradyumna, remember Pradyumna, he was a child, then he grew very fast. It must have been like so Sukadeva Goswami, he had this mystic ability also. So then Krishna came. But Krishna came and he assured Sukadeva Goswami, it's okay, you can come out. You'll be all right. So he was reassured by Krishna. He came out, and what did he do? He took sannyasa immediately. He didn't want any family encumbrances. He didn't want to have any. He didn't want to deal with the, mommy and daddy and the whole thing. He just left. So he's leaving, and who's his father? Vyasadeva. So he's running after him, son, the son. And it's described that all he could hear is the echo in the forest. He's gone. Yeah. Now when he left, he was naked. He didn't even have any clothes. So he's running, he's going through the forest, and there's some ladies in a lake. They're bathing. And there's ladies have this ability to see whether someone is innocent or not innocent, and they could see just by looking at him. He's beyond the bodily conception. They didn't even cover themselves. He just kept going, and they just kept bathing like nothing had happened. So then Vyasadeva came. He's still trying to catch his son, and they see him, and then they covered themselves. He's wearing white. He makes a distinction. So they cover themselves quickly. So then Sukadeva Goswami, what's he do? He keeps going, and he goes right to the bank of the Ganges where this assembly of sages are sitting, and Parikshit Maharaj there. It's amazing. That's like unbelievable. So he goes there and just sits. He sits down. He speaks the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what's also amazing is that now he is the example for someone who chanted Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanavedam. So these 9 processes of devotional service, and there's a devotee that's expert at each one of these. And Sukadeva Goswami, he was the best at chanting. But he was also expert at hearing, because he heard the Bhagavatam in the womb from his father and retained it. He remembered everything that his father said while he was in the womb. Similar to who else? Prahlad Maharaj. He heard from Narada Muni. So he was very expert at hearing. Yeah. Shrutidar. In the womb he was a Shrutidar. Shrutidar means whatever he hears, he remembers. Be nice to have a memory like that, huh? So he had that, and then of course it was different. When he spoke it was different, because now he's speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam, but he's getting questions from Parikshit Maharaj. So that wasn't there when he heard it, so that's a little different. But it's, he had quite an interesting birth. Now, Parikshit Maharaj, also, unusual birth. He's in the womb, and Ashwatthama decides he wants to destroy the last person in the Kuru dynasty. So he throws this Brahmastra, which is an interesting weapon. It only goes after the person that it's after. You know? So Uttara, the mother of Parikshit Maharaj, she prayed to Krishna. Very wonderful prayers to Krishna to protect the child. And she even said, "May I die, but let my child live." Yeah, a little different than nowadays. Yeah. It's absolutely insane. I don't know how many millions of children are killed every year by their mothers in the womb. It's terrible. Even Harisari told Prabhupada that his grandmother told his mother to just get a yarn needle, and you could finish the birth. Just take a yarn needle down there, and you could do an abortion yourself with Harisari. Yeah, he said that to Prabhupada. It's just so terrible. Imagine that. The grandchild, the grandmother's telling her child, you know, kill my grandson. Just take a yarn needle and poke him, and over. Like Kali Yuga, full on. Yeah. So terrible. But here, Uttara, may I die, let my child live. And of course Krishna, he protected Parikshit Maharaj. But yeah, his name is Parikshit, means the examiner. He always wanted to see. He's always examining. Where is that person that I saw in the womb that protected me? And he was the best at hearing. So these are two extraordinary devotees. Yeah. Very extraordinary devotees. And we get to hear, you know, this dialogue, this transcendental dialogue between the two of them for our own growth, spiritual growth. And by hearing this dialogue and following instructions, then we grow. Yeah, we grow spiritually. It's stated, Mahatsevam dvoram ahori muktes tamo dvoram yositam sangisam mahantaste samachita prasanta vimunyava surda sadhava. By serving great devotees, the door to the spiritual world is opened. So it's not that you actually have to do physical service. Just by hearing nicely, following the instructions, this is also, we could serve Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj by following instructions that are given in this transcendental literature. Of course, serving the Guru, serving great devotees. The door to this is how to enter into the spiritual world. It's all about service. In the spiritual world, also they're serving. Everybody's serving. So we're apprentices. We're trying to learn how to serve nicely Krishna and Krishna's devotees. On the other hand, if one engages in sense gratification and serves those who are also only interested in sense gratification, then the door to hell is open. So there's two doors. We can choose which door we want to go in. Better take the door to service. We've been here long enough, serving our senses, serving others' senses. Better serve Krishna's senses. Sarva pariva nirmugnam tatpradvena nirmalam hrisikena hrisikesa sevanam bhakti uchate. That service to Krishna means to engage our senses in the service of the master of the senses. Krishna is known as the master of the senses. And there's two very good side effects of this. One is that our senses become purified. Wouldn't it be nice to have pure senses, to have a pure mind, pure senses? Yeah. And then one becomes free of all material designations. Yeah. These material designations are a problem. It's called false ego. I'm very intelligent, American, Indian, strong. Yeah. False ego. There's our real ego is that we're the eternal servants of Krishna. We're the eternal servants of Krishna. So this process of Krishna consciousness is meant to reawaken this this service attitude towards Krishna. And by serving the devotees, by glorifying the devotees, we quickly become purified. There's a very nice verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Narada Muni. Narada Muni is my hero. Shuto nipatito dhyata adrato vanamolitaha. Shuto nipatito dhyata. That by glorifying the devotees, Shuto nipatito dhyata, the pure devotional service is so spiritually potent that if one simply hears about pure devotional service, Shuto nipatito dhyato, if one meditates upon pure devotional service, if one chants the glories of pure devotional service, if one, there's two others, if one has faith in pure devotional service and glorifies the devotional service of others, even if one is so low that he hates everybody, he immediately becomes purified. I mean, that's pretty low, right? To hate everybody. But this is how potent devotional service is. To glorify this pure devotional service, the devotional service of others. Krishna is very pleased. Yeah. Because the nature of this world is that we're envious. So to glorify, to appreciate, to have faith in devotional service is very pleasing to Krishna. Because there's nothing that attracts Krishna more than devotional service. This is the only thing. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tattva tatomam tattato gyatva vishate tarananda. that one can understand the Supreme Personality of God as He is only by devotional service. And when one is fully engaged in devotional service, then Krishna, He reveals Himself by this service. So it can't be emphasized enough. Yeah. We're all doing some service, but to add that nice spice of devotion to our service, Krishna is very attractive. He's conquered and overwhelmed, as described, by pure loving devotion. He's conquered. He's ajita. He's unconquerable. But he's conquered by the devotion of his devotees. So here in this purport, it's mentioned by Narottam Das Thakur, the mercy of Lord Nityananda. Lord Nityananda, the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda is so nice and cooling that all materialists who are always in the blazing fire of material activities may come under the shade of his lotus feet and be relieved. So there's an interesting pastime where Lord Nityananda gave his full mercy with his feet. Was it Shivananda Sain? Shivananda Sain, he was supposed to make some arrangements for Lord Nityananda. But no arrangements were made. There was no facilities for him. He was hungry. And finally, Shivananda Sain came, and Lord Nityananda kicked him. He kicked him. I mean, phew, that's mercy. Now someone might think, well, what kind of mercy is that? He kicked him? But this is God. And when God kicks someone, whew, that's mercy. Aristasura, that's how he was killed. Krishna kicked him to death. He got the mercy. And Kaliya, he was disturbing the residents of Vrindavan. So Krishna, he danced on his hoods. Such mercy. Huh? And Prabhupada said that when we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna is dancing on our tongue. And just as Krishna, he purified Kaliya by dancing on his hoods, it's described that the poison came out of his mouth. All the contamination was coming out of his mouth because of the merciful dancing on the heads of Kaliya. So by this chanting of Hare Krishna, the impurities are coming out. Yeah. We have to be patient and determined, and eventually all the impurities will come out. And we'll just have that one desire to engage in devotional service. So this is the mercy of Lord Nityananda, that he... and there was another instance of Madai. Madai, he hit Lord Nityananda, the most merciful Lord Nityananda. He hit him with a pot, causing blood to come out. And when Lord Chaitanya heard this, he was going to kill him. He brought his chakra ready to kill him, and Lord Nityananda said, no, my Lord, please, this is Kali Yuga. If you kill him, you have to kill so many, because they're so degraded in this age. Please, don't. So, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, he didn't kill him. And Jagai, he protected me. Madai was going to hit me again. And then Lord Chaitanya, he heard that, and he embraced Jagai. He was so happy to hear that. But then Madai said, but Lord, he did everything I did. Please be merciful to me as well. And he said, no, you've offended my Nitai. Only by getting the mercy of Nitai will you be free. Will I be able to give you mercy? So he dandavat, he grabbed the feet of Lord Nityananda and begged for mercy. Begged for mercy. And Lord Nityananda is he's even more merciful than Lord Chaitanya. So he forgave him. And then he also got the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So yes, Lord Nityananda is very merciful. Yes, and if you want to get the mercy of Lord Chaitanya, first you have to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda. But if you want to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda, you have to go out to the Jagais and Madhais. And there's a lot of Jagais and Madhais here in San Diego. Especially in this neighborhood here. So, this is how to get the mercy of Lord Nityananda and the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. So here also it's mentioned that the distinction between family life and spiritual life can be experienced by any person who has undergone the tribulations of living with a family. So Prabhupada had direct experience of this. His wife, she saw, what was it, the translation of the Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavatam. The whole Bhagavatam, or just, one volume. Prabhupada was so upset he couldn't believe it. And whenever Prabhupada would preach, he'd have some guest over to preach. She would go upstairs and drink tea with the children. Prabhupada was so upset. So he got so upset. At one point he said to her, "Tea or me?" And she said, "I'll take tea." She thought he was joking because he's always coming and going. So he left and never came back. That was it. Yeah. So yeah, in this material world, this actually most of the suffering that goes on in the material world is because of the opposite sex. Even Krishna says, "Nata tasya bhavet klesho bandhas chanya prasangataha." He says, of all types of suffering that arise due to material contact, none is greater than the suffering one experiences from association with the opposite sex. Yeah, man for woman, woman for man. Yeah, so much. There's divorce and sometimes murders. Just so much suffering. Sex life undoubtedly it's the main pleasure in this world, material world, but along with it comes suffering. Hlada tapakari. That whatever we think will be a cause of pleasure in this world, that very thing will be the cause of pain. Hlada tapakari. Yeah. So this is the reality. People think that they'll be happy by material sense gratification, and there is maybe a little bit there, a little drop of pleasure. But if let's say you're out in the desert, you're dying of thirst, and someone comes and gives you one drop of water, what's that going to do? It's going to tease you. It's not going to do anything, right? It's going to tease. There's nothing. You want a gallon of water at least. You're dying of thirst. Right? So that pleasure that we're searching for is in service to Krishna. And chanting Hare Krishna. Just like it said that I do not know how much nectar there is in the two syllables, Krishna. When I chant the holy name of Krishna, I desire to have many millions of ears. Anybody ever had that feeling when you're chanting? Very elevated level. Huh? And I desire to have many millions of tongues to chant the holy name. And when the holy name of Krishna enters into the courtyard of my heart, it stops all the nonsense activities of my mind, and I experience unlimited happiness. So this is what we want, right? Unlimited happiness. Yeah. Not this flickering material happiness that comes and goes in the material world. Nobody wants that. Everybody wants pleasure that's ever increasing. That's only in devotional service, in service to Krishna. That's where we'll find full satisfaction. There's one person who was doing an interview or speaking to Isaac Newton, and he asked Isaac Newton, what was your greatest accomplishment? And believe it or not, he said that I was celibate throughout my life. Isaac Newton. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he said, if I knew I could have pure devotees from giving birth, I would have 100 children. But it's actually very, very difficult to raise a child and have them Krishna conscious after being raised. Very difficult. I mean, some of us have been around for a long time. It's rare to see. Yeah. But so much energy, raising a child, so much energy, very expensive. I think it was something like, I mean, it depends on the income, but it's like, $500,000 to $800,000 if you're rich, $1 million, just raising a child. Very expensive. And the wife also, I was distributing books a few weeks ago, and the guy was very interested, and him and his wife were there, and he gave a rather small donation. I asked if he can give a little more. He said, well, I'd like to, but my wife, she's very expensive. I don't have much money anymore. She was standing right there, and she said, oh yeah, she said, we're very expensive. Wives are expensive, children are expensive. So it's actually it's said that if one can raise a child in Kali Yuga, it's like raising it's like managing a kingdom in other ages. Very difficult, very difficult. So, therefore, Prabhupada, he emphasized and stressed that devotees, if you can, stay brahmachari. Much easier, for you to go on in your Krishna consciousness. Of course, it's difficult. That sense, sex desire is very, very powerful desire. But it's a material desire. It's not our true desire. It's not the true desire of the soul. It's an illusory desire, stemming from this illusion that we're the body. We're not the body. We're the soul within. We're part of Krishna, eternal servants of Krishna. And it's stated, Yan maitanadi grihamedi sikam hutuchtam kanduya ena kavayur iva dukudu tripyanti neha kripana bahudukabhaja kandutavan malasajan visaheta dira. That this sex life, it's compared to the rubbing of two hands to relieve an itch. You have an itch and you relieve it. Sometimes the itch gets very... You don't have mosquitoes here. We're fortunate we don't have mosquitoes. I've only seen one since I've been here. But in Miami, me and Javita, we were in Miami for many years. There's tons of them there. And they bite you. And they itch. I remember seeing one devotee, he got bit so much, and he was scratching and scratching and scratching. And eventually, blood. They itch so much. So this itching can be a problem. But it's just that, it's an itch. So the itch will come and it'll go. You get an itch, you just let it go. Sometimes I would when in Miami, when I'd get a mosquito bite, it would itch, and I would test that philosophy. All right, just leave it alone, and it'll go away. And sex desire is like that. It'll come, and it'll go away. It'll come again, and it'll go away. But if we stick to Krishna consciousness, we continue practicing. Eventually, that itch it's going to go away. Believe it or not. Huh? And it won't come back. And we'll just have that desire to serve Krishna. and we'll go on in our happy way back to Godhead. But we have to tolerate. Now this verse goes on to say that the Grihamedis, they think that this is the highest pleasure in the world. This is the highest pleasure, because they don't have the higher taste. So many devotees in this movement, we've given that up. We've given that desire up because we're experiencing a higher taste. There is a higher taste, much higher, actually, much higher than that. But the Grihastas, they know that there's no ultimate happiness in this. So the difference between a Grihasta and a Grihamedi is the Grihamedi, he is engaged in sense gratification illegally. You know, he's having sex just for his sense pleasure, like here, all over the world, people are doing this. Grihasta, he has sex only to beget children and to raise them in Krishna consciousness. Just like I mentioned that Isaac Newton, he was celibate throughout his life, and he was actually very religious. He became a monk towards the end of his life. Yeah, he was a very religious person. And Krishna appreciated that. But then you have Bhaktivinoda Thakur, had 10 children. And one of them was the great Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So there's that side also. A pure devotee can have children and raise them as pure devotees as well. But not easy. I mean, I've seen so many Guru Kulis grow up since I've been in this movement, and to see one that came out chanting 16 rounds a day, following 4 regular principles, maybe count them in one hand, isn't it? So rare, so difficult. And the reason is because when they're growing up in our society, they hear about Maya a lot, and they're practicing. Some, they're chanting japa, and they're, coming to the morning program sometimes, and so they've had the experience of devotional life. But when they grow up in their late teens, they're curious. What's it actually like out there, Maya? And they get bewildered. Maya is so powerful, very difficult. And therefore Krishna says, Dabihesa ganamayi mama maya dharatyaya mama viye papajante maya mitam tarantite. This divine energy of mind consisting of the 3 modes of material nature is very difficult to overcome. But one who surrenders unto me can very easily cross beyond it. So, yeah, we have to somehow surrender to Krishna. Try our best and leave the rest to Krishna. Krishna will help us. He wants us to go back home much more than we want to go back home. So, is there any question or comments?
So, one thing I would recommend for devotees here who may not be so familiar with the Bhagavad Gita is at the end of the 3rd chapter there's a wonderful section where Krishna describes Kama as the ultimate enemy. And there's some very good instructions in the purports there about the relation really between prema and Kama. The Kama is prema that has been contaminated by the modes of nature, by our association with the modes of nature. So the goal of Krishna consciousness is to re-sublimate, if you will, to transform that Kama back into prema by the disciplines of Bhakti Yoga. So it's very nicely described there. And then if I could just share one verse, this is by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which I think is pertinent for the subject there.
Churn it.
This is in that song, Goduma Bhajanopadesh, Goduma Chanda Bhajanopadesh. Ramani Jana Sangu Sukham Chasake Chadame Bhayadam Purusharta Haram Harinam Sudara Samatta Mati Bacha Goldama Kanana Kundibidum. says, my dear friends, Sakhe, the happiness that comes from association with young women, in the end, produces great fear and steals away the goal of life. So instead of indulging that happiness, make your mind intoxicated with the mellows of Harinam Sankirtan, and in this way worship Lord Chaitanya, the moon of Godrumadweep in Navadweep. So really, this process of chanting and dancing is how we can feel that desire being. We can feel the bliss of Krishna consciousness, and we can feel the waning of the very powerful impetus for sex life. And one of my experiences in devotional service is that when somehow or other your schedule, there's not enough chanting and dancing, that's when you see devotees have trouble. Doesn't matter who they are. You could be in a movement of 20, 30 years, but if somehow or other you get away from enough chanting, with devotees, the material desires come up. There's, anyway.
Yeah, thank you. Anything else?
Dravida, where was the prema verse comma listed at? Where?
Oh, that's in Bhagavad Gita, 3rd chapter, text 37.
Okay, thank you. My question is also about something I remember from the Gita, and you did a great job describing how it says material activities might taste like nectar in the beginning, but they're poison in the end.
Yeah.
And then spiritual activities, the opposite. They feel
Yeah.
like poison in the beginning, nectar in the end.
Yeah.
You did a great job showing drop of nectar, ocean of poison for material activities. My question is about spiritual activities. Why do they feel like poison in the beginning? And you've shown that they become great nectar in the end. But why is it that we feel?
Well, for example, book distribution. For some, it's very difficult in the beginning. Quite often, it's difficult in the beginning. But if one continues, then it becomes nectar. Becomes very nice. And the reason it's difficult, or it's poison in the beginning, because it's an austerity. And the mind doesn't like austerity. The mind just wants to enjoy, right? And therefore, material activities, it's nectar in the beginning, because it's material. And the mind likes that. It's nectar in the beginning. But then it becomes poison, because it doesn't actually satisfy the soul. It's flickering happiness. But if we do austerities, nayam deho dehabhajam naloki kastam kaman arhate vidbhujaya depodiyam putikayena satam sudyad jasma brahmasokyam tarantam. Lord Rishabhdev, he says that of persons who have accepted material bodies, persons who have accepted the human form of life, they shouldn't engage in the activities of the animals, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but they should engage in austerities. And by this austerity, engage in brahmasokyam tvanantam, the happiness of the soul, which is devotional service. So, yeah, most people now, they're just engaged in animal activities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, haven't got a clue of devotional activities. Yeah, that's why we go out and we distribute books to let people know, hey, there's a happiness beyond this temporary material illusory happiness you're experiencing. There's something much higher. So we want to let people know. This is why Krishna comes. This is why Prabhupada preached. He wanted us to preach so much. Let people know. There's something much greater than this animalistic activities. Yeah. Yes. Rajendra Nandana Prabhu.
That was a wonderful class. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but you inspired thoughts within when you were speaking, specifically when you're talking about following the 4 regulative principles. That's an absolute necessity.
Yeah.
And how sometimes, I think there's probably more than a handful of Gurukulis.
I mean, I'm just saying that I know.
That
I
you
mean,
know.
there is more, of course.
Yeah. But this is, because I try to internalize, apply what I hear from my Prabhus, and, so following the principles, that's not a big a challenge once you've come to a certain level. It's like, I would never go back that way. But I thought of the next step, the challenge for devotees who are at that point is that, the subtle sex life is wanting some appreciation, some pat on the back.
Yeah.
The coin phrase is profit, distinction, and adoration. But just to simplify it for a simple person, if I'm looking for, wow, that was a great kirtan, that was a great class, you distributed that many books, or, whatever it may be, if one is performing the service with that desire, and it's there, that's part of the conditioning, it's there, everybody has to go through, and they conscientiously have to pray to give up those desires, seeing that they're actually weeds, even though Maya convinces us because it's just side by side with the devotional service, that it is the devotional service.
Pratishta.
Yeah, but that's a very very important test that has to be passed and become steady in remaining, remaining fixed. I don't want that. I just want the service. And the bliss of, like you were saying, I love how you say it. It comes, it goes, it comes, it goes, but it comes less, and then, and Dravida Prabhu said, and you come to the point where it stops. So that's the way devotional service is. It's just a matter of patiently waiting while we execute the process best we can.
I think Raghunath Das Goswami, he said, he calls it pratishta, this name, fame, adoration. Hog stool. Oh my God! I mean, hogs do like, oh, it's smeared on your face. Disgusting. It's actually disgusting. This subtle sex also. It's more difficult to get free of. Subtle, subtle desires. Okay, anything else? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.